Steve Kornacki has the results from Pennsylvania. Steve, refreshing, recording right now. What do you have?
Okay, Willie, and these are coming directly from the city of Philadelphia's website. Joe Biden now leads in Pennsylvania statewide by 5,587 votes.
Who says progressives can't be happy? Come on! It is Friday, November 6th, 2020. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. We are officially in the post-election day era and the day that Pennsylvania saw that Joe Biden move ahead in the polls, move ahead in the vote count, not the polls, the vote count, and on his way to get rid of the Cheeto-in-Chief. This is pretty freaking incredible day, everybody. So we are actually going to have a little bit of a freewheeling post-election day kind of show today. We're breaking from format a little bit. I don't know how you do anything else on a day like this, but it's pretty amazing. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken, and I am here once again with Sean Kitchen. Sean, welcome, man.
Thank you very much. How's it going?
Holy moly. Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little tired, but other than that, it's crazy. So today we're obviously going to talk about the election. We're going to talk about the post-election. There's a whole lot of other things that we're just not going to get to today, right? I mean, like, for example, COVID is spiking once again, right? On Thursday, we hit over 120,000 cases, breaking the record that we had set the day before, which is insane. A new mink variant of COVID has sprung up in Denmark. But wait a minute. Let me get climate change. Wait. Let's take a moment, shall we?
75 degrees in central Pennsylvania today in the middle of fucking November.
So let's just take a moment. We're going to take a moment today to really talk about the election. And, you know, again, I think anybody who's listening to this show, I think knows us well enough that it's not just going to be like all like happy talk and like Joe Biden's the best thing that's ever happened in the world, right? You know, but I think we can say two things. Number one, we've effectively stopped the worst of the bleeding, right? And number two, bad things do indeed happen in Philadelphia for fascists. So to that long tradition, that long anti-fascist tradition in Philadelphia, today we pay honor, right? As we do across the state for those who helped get Trump out. But of course, like anything else, it's never that simple. So we'll kind of get into that. So Sean, I know you and I were back and forth last night, like around the good old witching hour, past that, the 2 a.m. hour.
Drinking whiskey or beer.
Yeah. I actually was going with a Pilsner last night because I otherwise I think I would have been laid out flat. I would have been so exhausted. So
I had like half a bottle of wine sitting on my counter because
you don't know how it got there.
I know how it got there. I was preparing to drink it, and I just spent hours like doom scrolling and editing photos, and before I knew it was like 1:30 in the morning. I didn't have any fucking wine. I had Guinness and a shot of Woodford when I went to bed.
So, which way did you go? Went the Woodford.
What's that?
You went the Woodford way.
Yeah, I love me some good bourbon, you know, and I felt like last night deserved a nice double shot before bed.
Indeed.
It's one of the most emotional, draining 8 weeks of my life. I'm glad it's over.
Yep.
This week I was not looking forward to it, and I was not looking forward to it because of the response after the election. But no, I mean, people voted. We voted in record numbers. We turned out. We planned demonstrations. We threw down in the streets of Philadelphia, Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Lancaster, Erie, northeastern PA, Lehigh Valley. Like, we demanded that all the votes get counted. And no, I feel like, first and foremost, like, this whole victory in Pennsylvania goes to the progressive movement.
Totally, 100%.
Like, the work that JJ, JJ, Eric, everyone else has been doing over the past few months has been tremendous. We started talking about maybe a month and a half ago about Trump trying to steal this and trying to plan it out and, chasing down mail-in ballots. Fucking Democrats returned like 83 or 84% of their mail-in ballots, which is just phenomenal considering the point that like they returned like 80% in the in the primary. We spent the last like week and a half chasing down ballots. We spent the last week telling people not to mail their ballots, but to go to their county drop box.
Yep.
I sat outside of the Dauphin County drop box on election day. I might have saw like 200 people dropping off their ballots within an hour and a half time span.
Yeah.
Like people fucking voted this year. I'm still upset about the down ballots, but no, we got Biden.
So let's.
I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Let me just say, we have to organize, but I think one of the things we have to like make sure we remain vigilant as a movement. We beat back these fascists, we can't step down anymore. Like these people aren't going away, and we may have to deal with them. But you know what? In Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, we showed them like how we react to this, and we've been doing it for 4 or 5 years now.
Right. Right.
I mean, the response in Harrisburg and the mobilization in central Pennsylvania over the past 4 years has just been tremendous. And it started with Lancaster Stands Up, their emergency meeting, then their emergency Muslim ban protest, and it's just been, the ball has been rolling since that point, in my opinion. Like for me personally, but
no, but I think, look, I mean, you go back, I think you even step back even further than that, right? I mean, certainly in central Pennsylvania, and I think several things came together. I think what is it? Like, if you think about, once again, after Trump was elected, right? Well, first of all, you have to take it back to the Bernie campaign. Right. I mean, you got to take it back to the Bernie campaign, because that was, and I hear this all the time from, say, young folks, from students, from, you ask people how they got involved. I mean, you heard on Out to Coop Live in the interview I had with Rick Kajewski, right? What got him kind of like on that path, right, to the point where he would be kind of an elected official from Philadelphia. It was working on the Bernie campaign.
An open, like, progressive socialist from West Philly.
Right. I mean, and it's like, you get the Bernie campaign was like and I'm going all the way back to 2016, right? We're going back then when Bernie was running, got people involved and started the organizing. And again, there was a lot of things that went wrong on that campaign. He got in really late and everything. But what Bernie did, right, and Bernie's organizations did, right, what our revolution did, right, and kind of a whole bunch of other kind of associated groups, is that unlike what Obama did, right, is that you have kind of all this like a crazy mobilization, then tell everybody, okay, that's it, we're going away. No, the Bernie campaign kept on organizing and deepening, and then during that time also you saw the rise of of course, you've got to talk about the women's march, right, which mobilized like kind of women the day after for inauguration, right, the day after inauguration for that massive protest, the largest in history, right, which has now been incidentally surpassed by kind of like the Black Lives Matter protests, which have been ongoing all year long. Right? I mean, just in terms of numbers and consistency, all that kind of stuff. You also had Indivisible, right, former Obama staffers and progressive staffers who basically kind of started teaching people like how to put effective pressure upon elected officials in your backyard.
I also think
let me just finish the list, and then you got the rise of DSA, right? And DSA, instead of just deciding, as my experience has all been with DSA and the bulk of the socialist organizations. Again, this is what I came up in, so this is not at all a diss at all, because this is what I was a member of Solidarity for years, right? Was that they kind of like said, okay, how do we actually really seriously organize for power? Right. There's after these folks that, that were kind of like holding down the fort in DSA for decades. Right. And they're few and far between. And then you have a new group, younger folks who kind of got involved because of climate issues, because of student debt issues, because they got mobilized and kind of like and radicalized through Bernie. started working in DSA, but not just kind of like, let's talk about Marxist theory to the masses. No, let's actually organize for power, right, in the communities. And then when you saw Lancaster stands up and you saw that framework kind of come up, you had these burgeoning progressive movements in the state. And then the initial test, and again, this is the initial stress test, was this election where, okay, does everybody go in their opposite directions? No. They worked together. Right, and had were like single-minded in focus about how to approach this election, and I'm floored by what the progressive community has done in this state.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I also put this out there. I don't think we win this state if it wasn't for the gains we've made last year in municipal and county elections.
I think that's right.
Like, once you win these counties in the Southeast, like Delaware County, Lehigh, Montgomery, Bucks County, you effectively end their voter suppression machine that they have in the Southeast, right? Delco is one of the most notorious voter suppression machines in Pennsylvania for how corrupt the Republicans were. Once Democrats took over Delco, that stuff ended.
Right.
I mean, like, there's a lot of things I would also say, like, the expanding of the media infrastructure in this state, or not the state, in the Democratic Party, the coalition of we have a bunch of different podcasts coming up. We have a bunch of different YouTubers. And you know what? Like, fuck it. I'll go out on a limb. I won't go as far as saying the Lincoln Project, but like Pod Save America, they deserve credit for raising money and spreading that fucking money around the state organizations. Like, in the weeks up to the election, they were able to, they sent an email through their Adopt a State program, and PA Stands Up was able to raise like $150,000 off of that.
Yep.
Like, I mean, like, that's the type of stuff that we need. We took over that small money donations. One of the biggest things of the Bernie campaign in 2016 were the small dollar donations of $27, like the average donation of $27. Like, how many $25 donations did you end up giving this year to candidates across the state? Like, talk to Roxbury, his sister, she ended up is giving small dollar donations to $5 or $10 or $15 donations to different candidates all throughout the state or throughout the different counties. Like, that's the type of stuff that, like, actually matters. We showed that, like, that small money works. Grassroots money works, and watch them try to clamp down on that in the future.
Right. I mean, I think we got. But I think today, like in the second part of the show, we're going to kind of start teasing out some of those issues too. Right? Kind of like, what do we got to be looking ahead with, right? And I think that there's going to be shows coming up. But just a couple things about what you're saying. Number one, I got some shows coming up in Out to Coop Live, and one of the things that we're going to be devoting Out to Coop Live to for the next few weeks at least is kind of looking at some of those things. But something else that that I talked about on kind of the patron section of the patrons only part of this past Out to Coop Live. One of the things that I was talking about was, we have to find ways of enacting democracy, like practicing democracy in our own movements. And what I mean by that is that, to learn basically what the right wing did years, like 4 decades ago, 5 decades ago now, is they said, look, you've got these factions, right, that do not agree on a whole bunch of stuff. But they went through a process of kind of like deliberating and setting out kind of agendas, right? And we saw this,
and standing in line with their message,
right? And I think what you just said with about Pod Save America, right? So I'm not a fan of Pod Save America, right, as a podcast to listen to, but right, that doesn't mean, because that's not my personal thing where I want to do that. That doesn't mean that I have to draw a factional line between them and Pod Save America. Is to recognize we're at a moment in history in which that kind of collaboration, right? We don't need to agree on everything, but that kind of collaboration is real, especially just exactly as you said. It wasn't just like, okay, we don't talk bad about it. No, that's not the deal. They actually delivered a material goods, right? And people organized on this stuff. Is that kind of like progressive left coalition, I think, is going to be necessary at this moment. And I think that we saw it in action. I mean, we talked about it on the show. We talked about, Helen Jim kind of talking about, the organizations, the collaborations, the progressive movements and coalitions down in Philadelphia, right? From labor movements to the PA Stands Up to the immigrants' rights. What's that?
Reclaim Philly.
Reclaim Philadelphia, right? You got that. I mean, all these organizations on the ground were mobilized and committed to getting voters out to the polls. And exactly as Sean has said, had it not been for them in Philadelphia, right? And this is exactly what Helen Jim was saying in this one article we referenced before, was that then, Philadelphia would have been assumed by the Democratic Party to have just been kind of like, okay, we got Philly, we don't have to worry about it. No. And we're seeing the results, the really material results of this just today about the size of Philly vote.
And, I think the Republicans in Harrisburg are scared of us.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to the press conferences this week, you can tell they were happy that the Republicans held on to the chambers. But they that they weren't going to try any shenanigans in court and try to overturn this. I think it came out pretty apparent the next day. It was very self-congratulatory, backslapping. We're not going to mess with the results of Pennsylvania's election because they got what they wanted. They kept on to the chambers, but Corman made a point to attack dark money in his press conference the day after within the progressive movement and the onslaught of cash that came into Pennsylvania supporting these candidates. Yep. And you know what? I think that is going to shake them in their boots. The organization, I absolutely, I don't think that they were looking at how the build out, the infrastructure build out in the progressive sphere in Pennsylvania and how much has come together over the past several years.
Well, and I'll save some of this for the second part, but I think that's one of the things that we've got to be prepared to defend.
Yeah.
Right. Moving forward to progressive, but I'll leave that for. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
I know. Go ahead. I'm good. But I mean, also, the things like borough offices, they matter. Having Josh Shapiro as Attorney General versus Republican matters. If we had a Republican Attorney General with Tom Wolf as governor, this Attorney General would have allowed the Trump campaign to come in Pennsylvania, stir shit up, and look the other way.
Right.
They were doing that, actively doing that, with the U.S. Attorney Generals. With Bill McSwain and Freed in Pennsylvania. With David Freed. With the ballots, this mail-in ballot story from a month and a half ago. They tried ginning up a lot of false information and their own rat fucks, and we had the infrastructure in place to stop that. There's a bunch of things I could say, but actually working within the progressive movement and sitting on these tables and knowing the preparation that went into this over the past 2 or 3 months, and the Count Every Vote campaign that we've been talking about, and everything leading up to this it's just a weight off my chest. I can finally breathe at this point.
Yep. I hear you, and I definitely don't think you're low. And one of the things that you mentioned before, and you just reminded me that, and you remember back in the early days of Raising Chicken, when we got to interview Chomsky. You remember that?
Yep.
And one of the things that Chomsky said in that interview,
the red light, the red light,
exactly, right? And he said, people, because we were asking, this is right in the wake of Occupy, right? This is 2011. Is right in the wake of Occupy, and I think I asked him the question something along the lines of, well, what do you see as kind of going forward? You have this amazing energy that is has been unleashed first in Wisconsin, then in in the Wisconsin uprising, and then we see an Occupy. And one of the things he said, he went right down to a community getting together to get a red light, right, a stoplight, kind of at a dangerous intersection. And he said that one of the most important aspects of building social movement and building power is having wins, right, that you build off of, and have the experience of collective action that leads to a positive result, right, that shows them that if we get together, we can do something and accomplish something. And so in the act of doing that, we are learning that we are not helpless. We are learning to not despair. We are learning that, wait, maybe, to go back to the global justice movement's motto, maybe another world is possible. Right. And that, and again, not to kind of make it this huge thing, but that idea that wait a minute, the political horizons that we've been living under have been, in a sense, false ones. That we can expand that political horizon and we could see different possibilities, but we need.
And we're not
these
selling for
experience of winning.
mediocrity.
Right, exactly. And there's I'm forgetting the guy's name right now, but he writes a lot about kind of say utopia, and he was talking. There's one of these guys that was really big on kind of UBI for a bit. I'm just forgetting the guy's name, but what do you think they talked about? Say the role of utopia, and I don't want to get too heady right now, but the idea he wasn't mean utopia as some sort of fantasy where everybody just goes kumbaya and gets along. Like what he's meaning is kind of setting that horizon, right? That say this is what we deserve, this is where we're going, and we're not going to settle for crumbs, right? We've been told all we can have are crumbs. Over and over and over again, that you can't have nice things, right? Hillary Clinton said you can't have a pony, right? Bernie wants to promise everyone a pony. Well, guess what? We're here to say, no, yeah, we can. We can have ponies, right? And so these experience of winning right now are so critical. And I hope in this immediate time afterwards, like after this election, that is something that all of us hold on to, right? That is hope grounded in reality. And I listened to this Cornel West was on Michael Moore's podcast Rumble last week, and he gave kind of like a closing prayer, not prayer, but whatever, a prayer for the nation, whatever. And that was one of the things he was talking about. He's like, talking about hope grounded in material goods. And by goods I don't mean like stuff. I mean these kind of organizational victories, right? When you are actually in communion with others to accomplish these ends and seeing a different possibility, right? So, yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
No.
So okay. So let's just we'll kind of tick a few things here, and then we'll kind of take a bit of a break, and then we'll come back and talk a little about kind of where we go from here. But we should also say, right now I'm looking at, this is from 538, has been doing, just had another update. Right now, not only is Biden ahead in Pennsylvania, right? Biden is also now ahead in Georgia, right? So, I mean, it's not by much. It's about, let me see.
Thank you, Stacey Abrams.
Well, there you go, right? Right now.
And also, I think, thank you, Brendan McPhillips. Right? I actually, so people don't know who that name Brendan McPhillips is, but if you work in Pennsylvania politics, you know who Brendan is. You've heard the name. I met Brendan back in 2014 when he was running Kevin Strauss's campaign against Brian Fitzpatrick. This was right when Mike Fitzpatrick resigned and Brian was taking over. And, it's amazing. It's fun watching someone go from working a congressional campaign like that, didn't win, but went on to then work for Helen Gim, went on to work for, I think, Andrew Gillum, if I'm not surprised,
really?
in Florida.
Okay.
He ran Gillum's campaign and pulled out the surprise primary victory. Brendan then he was Pete Buttigieg's national field director, responsible for the whatever caucus turnout. But I mean, yeah, but as much as but Biden, and Brendan is a Philly boy, and Biden the campaign hired Brendan McPhillips to run the state in Pennsylvania.
Thank God.
I mean, and it's, yeah, I mean, there's small things like that happens here in Pennsylvania or politics that we have the talent, and it's great seeing that talent get cultivated and where we're going as a movement and coalescing together.
Cool. So is he the person I get in touch with about the fact that I still haven't got my freaking yard sign that I ordered weeks and weeks ago? Just saying, I'm a little bitter about this for a bunch of reasons. It's frustrating, but yeah, I mean, well said, Sean. So if we look at, let me just run through the numbers for folks right now. So right now, obviously, we're at 253, right? 253 electoral votes, I believe, right? Yep, that Biden has. Now this is before, Pennsylvania, of course, he is now ahead by about 7,000, little under 7,000 votes. Right, Biden went ahead of Trump. Right? You remember this is what was expected to happen. There was going to be the red mirage that was going to happen on election day night. Election night, and then we were going to see the counting of the mail-in ballots, right? That were going to be primarily Democratic, and Philadelphia saw like 90%, right? 90% of those ballots, those mail-in ballots, were breaking to Joe Biden. We also saw this huge sections of this. This was interesting about it too, as well. That Kornacki was talking about in a lot of the red districts too, as well. It was like Democrats in the red districts were also sending in mail-in ballots too. So you're seeing even in red districts, the mail-in ballots were breaking like 60%. Towards Biden. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, like, how much did Trump screw himself by just not attacking the mail-in ballot process and just trying to do everything to delegitimize a process that Republicans have been using and taking advantage in red states throughout the country for decades?
Well, I think what would have happened though, I think that
I think Trump has permanently done the Republican Party damage to the mail-in ballot situation. I don't know, like, if they can recover from that in the years to come.
I would agree with that, but I would also say though that was, I mean, I don't think that he didn't screw himself. I think that was a tactic that they were going to go do early on. They were going to make a clear line and divide. Right, and they targeted specific states over this, because what's interesting is that this whole idea, this breakdown of the mail-in ballot that was kind of that broke in Pennsylvania, overwhelmingly Democratic, was not the case in several other states.
And it wasn't, but like for months, you had people like Senator Mastriano, you had these reopen protests, you had these people telling people to show up in person to vote and just say like your vote. Like they spent months just spreading this rhetoric around it, like mail-in ballots aren't the same as like voting in person, or doesn't carry the same weight or the same affect. I don't know, like you know what I mean, like that, like whole like
they wanted to turn a specific way of voting and politicize that, like a culture war, and that's what they did,
and it backfired.
Right, in Pennsylvania, right? That's what we were clear about, because like in other states, it was that was not exactly the case. It didn't break exactly in that way, and some of those states had already experienced with mail-in ballots, right? And so that was one of the reasons that this was not something brand new. But those states that kind of expanded the mail-in ballot programs, like Pennsylvania, in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, those are the ones that the Trump campaign and the state legislators dominated by GOP went after.
So the mail-in ballot actually happened in October of last
2019,
year.
right? Exactly.
Yeah. Like pre-pandemic, but like, and it's also like,
but when pre-pandemic, that's absolutely right. But you gotta say that I don't think that as many people would have done that had it not been for the pandemic, right? That's when they really pushed it and said this is what's going to be safe.
And then the distrust,
right,
that the Republicans have spent the last 2 months on, like without the pre-canvassing and just trying to create chaos, and like you rat fucked your own side out from voting in a very convenient way. Yeah, no.
Right. But they were going all in, and with this, that they're gonna cause disruption around the election when the ballots are coming in. And I think this is like a tailor-made Trump situation, right? That you just get in and you just freaking like mess shit up, and that you hope in the chaos that you're going to be able to kind of like, steal whatever the hell it is. Right, that's the way he's operated in his business career. That's the way he's operated in the presidency, and here we are doing it here. But this time, I don't think it's going to fly. Right? I mean, there's going to be a bunch of lawsuits, and I was saying to Sean before the show, is that once this, I think, Don Jr.
I think he's going to get laughed out of the court.
Well, did you? Yeah, I agree. But, right, and we'll talk about this more in the second hour. But, do you see what Don Jr. said last night?
No.
We got to go total war now. Right, he says we got to go total war, and then you've got whatever Corey Lewandowski coming out basically saying that these other Republicans need to be taken to task because they behaved like sheep. Right, they need to stand up and be counted now. Right, they're sounding the battle cries. Right, so
if we're gonna like just triple and quadruple down and take the Republican Party further to the right, and make QAnon look mainstream.
Absolutely. Last night they arrested two people because they got at least two, I think, in Philadelphia, because they got
word with fucking guns
that some armed people were going with a Hummer towards the election site and were going to disrupt it. Which means, thank God, they had somebody on the inside who knew the hell what was going on. So they got they took care of that. I do not think we are out of the woods when it comes to that kind of nonsense. And matter of fact, I think it's going to set the tone for a while. But
no, and we also need Facebook and Twitter to step up and just take these fucking people off the internet and deplatform them.
Well, yeah, we can also break them up too. I'm for that.
No, but I mean, like that. I think like
yeah, step one, baby steps.
Like first step is just delete their fucking Twitter accounts.
Fair enough.
Like,
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, like that's just. But like, and just destroy a thing of communication for these people. No, and these people have to be broken up. But yeah.
So let me run through like where we are at this point, at least for this podcast again. Like once again, we're about 6,000 plus, almost 7,000 votes. Biden has gone ahead now of Donald Trump in the state of Pennsylvania. In Arizona, right? Arizona right now. Now again, Fox News and the AP have already called Arizona, but it's really super tight. But there was just an update like just this second as I was looking at it, and it looks like we've got about just under 4,000 votes. Joe Biden is ahead in Arizona. In Georgia, Biden is ahead by less than 2,000 votes right now, right? And my understanding is at this point there's one, maybe two counties in conservative counties in Georgia that we're still waiting for votes to come in. But most of this is coming from some of the suburbs and the exurbs from Atlanta, which are heavily Democratic. So we shall see where that goes. In North Carolina, it looks like Trump holds on to North Carolina at this point. He is ahead by about 90,000 votes, maybe less than that. So that's a significant lead there. In Nevada, Joe Biden is ahead, and at 11 o'clock today, they're supposed to go ahead and they're going to release this big cache of results that comes out of why am I forgetting the name of the county? Las Vegas. Clark County, thank you. Out of Clark County. That should be dropping today around 11 a.m., at least the last time I checked before we started recording today. And while not as a big, you're not going to see as large of a margins that we saw in Pennsylvania, those are expected to break towards Biden. And if that's the case and it gets Nevada, like that's pretty significant. Because then you're talking about not just putting Biden over, like right now, it wins Pennsylvania. That basically puts Biden to 273, right? That's a 3-vote one. But if you add in Georgia, that's an additional 16 electoral electors, right?
So,
and then if you add in Nevada, what's Nevada? Do you know offhand?
I don't know.
Let me run through this. Okay, so look, if you add in Georgia, that's another 16 electoral votes. If you add in Nevada, that's another 6 electoral votes. So that's 22. You add in Arizona, that's another 11 electoral votes. That's 33. Right? So then now you're in the range of 300 plus. Right? And again, we talked about this in the show before. Is like this is one of the reasons why it was so critically important to get people out and vote en masse. Because the bigger that electoral victory, right, I think the more we're able to stave off the worst consequences of what we're going to see from the right wing on this. And last thing I'll say, Joe Biden is also on course to have one of the largest number of votes cast for any individual in U.S. history. All right, his vote margin right now, I believe, is going to be in the realm of about 4 million more in the popular vote. Right, I heard projections last night saying that it could reach up to 6 million in the popular vote. We'll play conservative for now. So basically getting more votes than Hillary Clinton got in the last election in the popular vote. And I think as Ian Millhiser pointed out in a tweet this morning, is like this is the first time in 7 years that we'll have a president that's been elected by the majority of the American people.
Yeah, and I think I think we have to put a more serious emphasis on turnout. I mean, like, we just can't let the Trump turnout from the Democratic side be an aberration. We have to do this every time. Every year. And, I think with the movement that's been built in Pennsylvania, I think we're going to see a lot more gains on the state and local levels. Like, we didn't see them this year, but like the county and municipal levels, like I think I think we have the opportunity to continue to build on that. Build more candidates, build a bench, and stuff like that. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about this before we go to break. It's like so one of the things that we don't need to get into all the weeds on this one, but the one dynamic that is going to take some time to kind of really look at and not just react to, right? But to take a real look at is the fact that while Joe Biden is on course on the course to victory here, the Democratic Party took losses in the U.S. House of Representatives, in the House. It lost seats in what was supposed to be a blue wave, right? And
DCCC went O for everything.
O for everything, right? And and they were hopeful that they were going to take the Senate. That is not happening, right? So not only you got Biden, this big win. We should all celebrate that win, right? That's a victory for progressives on the ground, right? But we still have a failing infrastructure. Like in Pennsylvania, we've talked about this before. Sean and I were both, very hopeful that we were going to see some significant gains in the state legislature. They did not materialize. Right.
And now I've had some conversations with people. Mm-hmm. They think because it didn't materialize because of how high turnout was. And if you have districts like this that are hitting 90% turnout that have been drawn the way they are, that Republicans were able to win. I don't know that. I'm not going to argue that. But to me, it felt like here in Pennsylvania and across the state, we had no message besides Trump bad man.
Well, yeah.
And the fact that like the finger pointing from Democrats like Connor Lamb or Emily Skopoff attacking progressives over issues like defund the police and healthcare and natural gas, like fuck your feelings, dude.
Right? Yeah, like that. I'm with you 100% on that.
I mean, like for like it's like Connor Lamb thinks he has to bear the brunt of what Black and brown communities are protesting in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. When someone like Summer Lee, who had a constituent get murdered, shot in the back by the cops 7 times while running with unarmed, and you're going to like go down the white grievance identity politics.
That's exactly what they're doing.
And if you want to do that, guess what? Become a Republican.
Well, yes, absolutely. And I think that
we are not going backwards on, we might there was a Democratic consultant, one of my friends, Joe Corrigan, who said this, we might have lost because of defund the police, but we're not going backwards on this. We're not going backwards as a party and as a movement on civil rights and providing justice within these communities. That might have cost us a late election this time, but we're not going backwards on these issues. And I feel like if that's the case, then yes, absolutely. But it's not the time to be blaming progressives for wanting people, African Americans and Black and brown communities, working class communities, to stop being abused by the police.
You know what?
And you have the fucking nerve to finger point to the Black and brown community who carried Biden over the edge. And this is how you're going to attack them?
Yes, they are. And I think that, look, this is part of me is like this, is on this like this. You want to say that stuff? Go right ahead. I'm not even going to get into this like it's not the correct time. No. You want to say it? Show your cards now, right? You show everybody your freaking kind of like your racist credentials and throw them on the table. Let's have that fight. Because I think that's what where we need to go. Is because I think that, look, my theory of the case. Let me say this for now. And there was this guy. I don't know if it was Charlie Cook. No, it wasn't Charlie Cook. I can't remember the guy's name. He was. I'm trying to see if I could pull up his name for anybody. But last night in the wee hours of the morning, whatever, or no, it was actually earlier than that. There was this guy on from the Cook Political Report, right? I think Chris Hayes had him on when he was hosting at one point. And he basically was saying what my gut response was, right? Except he's got actually data and research on it. And for me, it was just kind of like,
this and Democrats didn't knock doors. Democrats decided not to knock doors, while Republicans knocked doors this whole entire time.
Right, but here's the point I want to make, right? So not only that, but here's the thing. This is the effect. And this is where people like, and I will ready to go to battle with people like Connor frickin' Lamb and these people about, who they're going to blame. The thing was, when you run on, we all know this. Everybody has been saying this, right? From mainstream media to the left, to the right, all this stuff. The Joe Biden campaign right, and the Democratic Party chose to go after white suburban voters and moderate Republicans. That was their target. They put their resources, primary resources, in then. And so then when there was the Black Lives Matter movement that was out there, what happened? You had like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris going out there disciplining the protesters, right? Not making a clear line of distinction between like some few people, or even for that matter, quoting Dr. Martin Luther King about...
Or Joe Biden talking about looters.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? And so the point is that the whole messaging was about Trump bad, not the Republican Party bad, Trump bad man, right? That was the message. And Joe Biden is like, let's get back to normal, right? And I'm not Trump. Look, I'm a decent guy. He's not a decent guy. That was the message. And maybe what you were saying earlier, Sean, maybe that's what had to happen in this election. I don't know. I'm not convinced of that, but that's water under the bridge at this point. I think one of the effects of that message that carried down from the top from the Biden campaign on downwards is that I think it was effective in convincing some Republicans and some moderates to get out and vote and to vote for Biden, because we started seeing these results back where you had, say, Democratic House members losing their seats in districts that Biden took by like 60%. So that means people went in and voted for Biden and voted Republican right down the road. And I'm not convinced if you actually ran on a policy agenda and a different vision of the future, not just Trump bad man, and actually went after and attacked the Republican parties for how they enabled Donald Trump all these years. Because you don't get Donald Trump doing Donald Trump without a Republican Party that is freaking kissing his ass and jumping on board that train all the way around. You don't get a Supreme Court that is dominated by right-wing ideologues, right, in a Republican Party that decides to resist Donald Trump. No, a Republican Party, this was their agenda. And Trump provided them cover. But Biden and the Democratic Party the Democratic Party leadership, I should say, refused to go after the Republican Party. So what happens? If they had done that, I'm not convinced that what would have happened is that there would have been Republicans who had been so disheartened by Trump in that situation that they would have stayed home. So instead, you increased the chance that somebody was going to go to the polls and vote Republican down ballot, even if they were voting for Biden at the top of the ticket.
You brought your opponents to vote for you.
That's exactly right.
While at the convention, you gave more time to Rick Snyder.
Exactly right.
And John Kasich versus like the squad.
Exactly right. You gave your entire convention over to the Republicans. I mean, anti-union Republicans, freaking Kasich. Right.
And did you see what AOC said about McCaskill the other day?
No.
She's like, you keep on bringing on these losers to talk about elections. When like McCaskill ran as a caravan-driven hysteria Democrat,
exactly,
and lost.
Exactly.
Like
I heard her last night, Claire McCaskill, get on MSNBC last night and talk about how, we're going to have to start to kind of roll back from these kind of like radical proposals, like, like not killing black people in the streets. I mean, she didn't say that, but that's what that they were talking about. So now there is one sign of hope, though, right? So maybe there is a way of pulling the Republican Party kind of back on a train, right? So there was one strong Republican voice that came out that set out a path for the future. Let me play you this audio from this one Republican who decided to break ranks and then finally kind of speak up. Okay, here you go.
One of my prayers is that the Republicans will take back their party. The country needs a strong Republican Party that's done so much for our country.
Yeah, for our country. You know who that was? Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi getting on national TV saying prayers for the Republican Party has done so much for our country. Just let that sink in. That's the Democratic Party leadership. And that points the direction about where things are going to go in the next administration, which is why we can't stop, ever stop organizing right now. So on that note, we'll take a little break. We're going to come back and we'll talk about what directions forward. But I have to say, in the spirit of true reaching across the aisle even to the kind of the most right wing folks in there, I want to appropriate something that that came out of the Trump campaign that I think is really good advice for where the progressive movement needs to go for now. So here you go, and then we'll go right to a break.
Strike and 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 strike until you have victory for every enemy that is aligned against you.
There it is. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Raging Chickens Out the Coop podcast. And yeah, that little bit of sound that you heard there at the beginning or the end as the lead out was Paula White, who was one of the Trump administration's, I guess, like, I think they call it like a spiritual advisor or something like this, and was given this, like, I don't know, sermon about what to do. Now, of course, she was talking about how you just need to strike and defeat the evil, which she sees as like, you know, whatever, anybody who's not a right-wing kind of religious conservative, but whatever. I like that. So I'm going to keep this on my soundboard going forward.
Strike and strike and strike until you have victory.
Yeah, that was great. So, Sean, so I just, you were kind of getting at this before. So, I mean, one of the things that I think, you know, going forward is that got to keep up the organizing and moving forward. I've been pretty disturbed to hear that the kind of, say, centrists in the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party establishment is immediately jumping on progressives as the reason why we lost the House and didn't take the Senate. I have to say it's you know, I made a conscious decision, right? You know, about a week and a half ago, right? Because if you've been listening to us on the podcast, you know that I think that both of us have been frustrated with the Democratic Party, been frustrated with some of the failings, but have also been committed to a better version of that, right? Getting people out elected and all the, you know, actually kind of building power, not just sit there and tearing it down. And even Sean today kind of recognized what Pod Save America did, right? And actually kind of, you know, giving them kind of kudos where they're deserved. To see that this has not been returned, right? The thank yous for, hey, you know what? I know that there were some bitter feelings after Bernie and things like this, but you know, you guys really showed up, you know. And I have to even say, even on Morning Joe this morning, even while the bulk of the show was kind of like criticizing progressives once again, they at least acknowledged how hard progressives in the left worked to get Democrats elected in spaces, right? That guy Willie, whatever, I don't watch that show normally, but that guy Willie that you heard on the intro today, he basically even acknowledged, like, you know, look, they especially in places where the Democrats weren't, progressives worked really hard to get out the vote. So that's kind of one of the things that we're facing. And let me just throw something out at you. I'm just kind of curious how you think about this, Sean. Is like we've talked about the Lincoln Project before, right? And we've talked about, you know, these Republicans, anti-Trump Republicans and so on. And yes, they're going on now to kind of establish a kind of a media empire or whatever like this. But my thought was about the Lincoln Project too, was like, these are folks that are basically lobbying because they recognize the Republican Party is going to be burnt to the ground for a bit for those kind of, you know, Republicans, right? The Republicans that, ran the McCain campaign, kind of worked in the George Bush campaign.
Pick Sarah Palin as vice president.
Right. It makes Sarah Palin for vice president, made a case for the
Hawked us
torture
into
memo.
the Iraq War.
Right. Exactly. Right. So we could go on and on and on and on. Right. And they're trying to basically kind of brush themselves off and kind of make themselves look all shiny and new and appealing to Democrats. And my thought is that they're looking for a certain kind of realignment where there's a space for those folks in a Joe Biden administration in which they will kind of move and occupy that center of power and have a disproportionate influence on the Biden campaign. So, I mean, and I think, right, that's what one of the things that concerns me is that, well, I won't say concerns me. One of the things that I kind of noticed when there's immediate jumping on progressives here by people like Connor Lamb here in Pennsylvania, by what's her name, Spangberger, right, down in Virginia.
Yeah. The Trip C people who lost every race.
Right, exactly. Is that, basically all went after, and there's a refusal, an absolute refusal to acknowledge, right, any kind of wrongdoing or any kind of mishaps or missteps on their parts, and immediately turning to black and brown communities in particular. Like Summer Lee, for example, she was like livid about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like what Emily Skopoff said is just like white, like suburban feminism to the nth degree. And it's pretty fucking shameful.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, for someone who we met at Keystone Progress Summit the past couple of years, we haven't been following Pennsylvania politics out west as much, that much. But Emily Skopoff angered a lot of supporters yesterday. And I can guarantee you this, she won't be running for her political career is over after that. Basically, like calling out the progressive women, i.e. Sarah Namarato, Summer Lee, Emily Kincaid, Elizabeth Fiedler, Danielle Otten, and others for just backslapping themselves.
Yep.
Over this gladly. And I mean, like Danielle Otten jumped into this conversation yesterday, and she was like, "I'm a progressive woman. I flipped the Republican district, and I'm still as progressive as ever."
Exactly.
like, what's your point here? Like, we have basically these. I don't know if that's exactly what she said, but she talked about flipping a Republican district and sticking to your values. But the way she just decided to flippantly attack black and brown communities.
Right.
And you saw Connor Lamb do that. You see a lot of other Democrats nationally are doing that. And sorry, you lost. This is on this is on you. You didn't have a message this whole entire time. There was no opposition message to the Republican agenda here in Pennsylvania regarding the coronavirus and the herd immunity mentality that the PAGOP has been pursuing.
Right. So here's what's going on the national level. Here's the national version of this, right? This is an article in the Washington Post published this morning, right? Or was it yesterday? It was yesterday. It was about this kind of explosion, right? This big, huge 3-hour-long kind of meeting in which Spangberger said this stuff. I want to read you some of the context, and this is how things are being framed right now. So it says party leaders, this is from the Washington Post, party leaders had expressed certainty that Trump's divisiveness and mishandling of the pandemic would help them expand their majority with wins in GOP-held districts, and yet they lost at least half a dozen seats and failed to retake the Senate. So let me just see, it's even acknowledged here, the centrists, right, the party leaders, they thought they only needed two things, right, Trump being divisive, and two, he mishandled the pandemic. That was it. That was the entire agenda. The explanation laid out by centrists, according to multiple people who were on this call and spoke on the condition of anonymity, is that Republicans were easily able to paint them all as socialists and radical leftists who endorse far-left positions such as defunding the police. Quote, "We need to not ever use the word socialist or socialism ever again. We lost good members because of that." Representative Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat from Virginia, who narrowly leads in her reelection bid, said heatedly, "If we are classifying Tuesday as a success, we will get fucking torn apart in 2022, is what she told everybody. Other centrists made a similar case. Now, here's what Pramila Jayapal said in response. Right? She's the co-chairman of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and she argued that Democrats shouldn't single out people and ideas that energize the party's base. Representative Rashida Tlaib, a self-described Democratic socialist, grew angry, accusing her colleagues of not being interested in appealing to anybody but white people in suburbia. "To be real," this is her, quote, "to be real, it sounds like you are saying stop pushing for what black people want," unquote. That's at the heart of this controversy. And this is precisely what we saw with Connor Lamb, right? And why am I Prokop? Skopov. I don't know why I can't remember her name for some reason. Maybe probably because I see red when I'm thinking about it. So this is the explanation that's going out there. So remember, the reason why, let's be clear, when they went after Bernie for that stuff, Bernie responded to it, and he's responded with policy and an argument for the policy, and he talked about this. You want to blame me as a socialist by saying that people shouldn't have to die, by people should have medical care, by people shouldn't be tossed to the curb, right, when they don't have a job, that we should hamper our next generation with student debt. That you're going to call me a socialist for wanting not to have those things, have at it, go for it, right? You when you argue with people and you make your case, that allows you to have a counter narrative. Instead, the Democratic Party leadership just said, no, we're just not even going to talk about those policy things. All we have to say is like,
we're going to run an incompetence campaign. And you're like,
yep.
And this is like what Michael Brooks said before he passed away.
Yep.
That pretty much Democrats are going to run an incompetence campaign, no messaging, and just hope Trump fucks up to get them over the finish line, which is what happened.
Yep.
like 100% like what happened.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that, I think that all of us, I mean, if you're listening to the show, chances are that you're kind of like, here on the left to kind of with your, so one of the things that we should keep in mind, right, is to not let that kind of discourse get us on our heels, right? Because this is what happens. I mean, it's always the case, but it's going to be pushed back even more right now because those people, right, the Democratic Party leadership, right, they know somewhere in their freaking warped souls, if you want to put it like that in Biden's terms, they know that they screwed up. And they know that their messaging about how to approach this stuff on this just a competence campaign with no policy, we're not going to argue for people. They know that is losing. And they see the future of their own power at stake. So what we need to do is to keep moving and keep that pressure up.
This is like that yoga vote.
That's exactly the same. It's exactly.
The yoga vote conversation.
Exactly. This is exactly it.
Yeah, and speaking of yoga. So one of the things that like really like fucking up my crawl is
don't mince words now, Sean.
The attacks against my state senator John DeSanto, who received a $1 million to $2 million PPP loan through the land development company he works for. Who has an extremely terrible anti-choice record, who voted against the expansion of like CHIP, an issue that's just like fucking sink anyone. Out of any of those issues, one of the things that they spent the most time focusing on here in my district was a yoga studio that John DeSanto voted for because it was in a budget bill that everyone else voted on. Who voted yes to get to complete a budget. So they went in to find this obscure fucking line item, and like literally like the yoga room that they have, I haven't seen it. We call it the Zen Den. The Senate Zen Den.
The Zen Den
is literally like the size of my office space, which is like 12 by 12, 16 by 16, like not that big of a room.
Mm-hmm.
They put some carpet in there. They put some ornamentals in there. They put like a nice little fountain and has like music humming, like great place. And yeah, like when it comes to self-care at the workplace, I don't care who spends that. Like, you know what I mean?
Totally.
I don't care if it's state government. I don't care if it's a private company. How many like offices have gyms and stuff like that in their building? Like, so like that type of material stuff, I don't care about. But that was the attack that they dumped so much fucking money into mailers and TV time and online ads about the Zen Den. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's the type of stuff that like infuriated me. When I was knocking on doors for Brittany Rodas, had a committee woman tell us, "You knock doors out here?" Like in one of the most competitive districts.
Wait, we do that? We do that?
And then like my county chair fucking posted on Facebook it's a great night. We went blue when Dauphin County always goes blue. Like Dauphin County going blue is like saying water is wet. Like, and I called them out. I was like, this is like fucking shameful.
Yeah.
Like, it's embarrassing. Like, you actually posted this and you're happy by these results when like we had competitive races and no one did a thing out in the suburbs to like win these races. Like, what good is it to like run up county votes when our party chair out here, like has there countywide we had 2 seats. We now have 1, and that is mandated by the commissioner, by a minority commissioner, who is a fucking Republican to begin with.
My God.
Like George Hartwick should have multiple DUIs. Probably at least should have 1. He got like caught shit-faced drunk at a 7-Eleven, and the head of the GOP county commissioner, Jeff Hayes, is probably the one who got him off the hook for this. So like that is like this is Dauphin County politics right here. So like the only seat we have in our county is pretty much a fucking Republican filling in as the minority county commissioner. Like the way like the judges a couple years ago fucked this up. Like in 2017 we had judicial elections where like there's usually like a gentleman's agreement between the Democrats and the Republican. Republicans keep the majority. Democrats keep 1 judge for the countywide, and that judge takes over children and youth because Republicans fucking hate dealing with that. Like this is just how it, like, and they lost that seat in a county election. Like because people were bullet voting for the Republicans. Like because people were like, it was like one of those things like there's 4 people, pick 3, and instead of just bullet voting for your party like a sane normal person do, people were like, all right, here's boom, we'll hit 2 other ones and dilute the vote. Like
right.
And I mean like the Republicans look at like our county chair as an asset because they keep them in place. Like I mean we have like I mean, like, yeah, we had. I mean, I didn't. Yeah. I'm not even like last year. We had 3 people running for office. Brad Kaplinski was one of them. See how that it's going now for like these are our county row offices. One person who didn't know what the fuck the treasurer was like, the county treasurer does, and was talking about the North Dakota pipeline, like when they were running for office. Like just absolutely nothing to do with the fucking office. Like, like these are just like, and these are the type of Democrats that like we put out there because there's just no organizing at all with a 10,000, 12,000 fucking voter advantage in this county.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
And like the person's never picked up any county seats. Like Sue Helms should probably be in jail. She's a witness in a trial with her company for the 2nd time.
And she's can't make this shit up.
Fucking old as dirt. Andy Lewis took a PPP loan for his company. Like, yeah, I mean, like, it's just insane. And I get it. Like, Mahaffey is going to be a Republican that Democrats or unions stick for because Mahaffey actually goes to bat for public sector unions. Like, not like some of these Republicans who are like union friendly, who only vote on building trades issues. Where Mahaffey owns a beer company, has a union history in his family, is a Republican, you know, anti-choice and stuff like that. But he's been pretty good on the he's been pretty good when it comes to protecting public sector unions in this state and helping teachers and public workers. So like I get it, but like there's at least 2 seats that we should have picked up in this county.
Look, I mean, I like the vote tallies really surprised me, and we talked about that. And
I mean, there were some precincts awards or whatever that had like 100% turnout, like in Dauphin County. So like everyone fucking voted.
Yep. So great. So okay. So let me.
I guess we could move on to the happier things.
Well, let's talk about the horizon for a little bit, right? Because I think that one of the things that I think I like, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the first part. I've been extraordinarily impressed with the what the progressive movement in this state, and really across the country, have been able to do. And I fully expect, and like I said, I was watching Morning Joe today. I was watching Morning Joe because Steve Kornacki's there, and I just like whatever. I'm a wacky for Kornacki. Right?
Give him a raise.
Right, totally. Right, that dude was. I mean, seriously. But so, and I wanted to see the results. Right, I was hoping that they were going to come in last night. It was going to stay. That's why I was up so late. So I was okay. Kornacki's there, so I'm going to deal with the whole Morning Joe crowd, so I can get to him and whatever. So saw that. Anyways. Is that there's two things that we need that I think is really going to be important for all of us to be focused on, right? So number one is there's a very loose, and I would say like developing, right, but fragile power coalition on the left now, right? And maintaining that should be our priority, right? Now, by maintaining that coalition, I don't mean that like, whatever Joe Biden. No. I'm talking about the progressive left, right? So
I don't think that's fragile though here in Pennsylvania.
No. Like, but look, the pressure is going to come up, right? And there's going to be serious critiques that are going to be coming forward, and I think that. Yes, there's going to be a perfect place to kind of go after the Democratic Party and Democratic Party leadership. We've already been doing here too as well, but always keeping the eyes on the prize, kind of moving forward, right? And my concern is that there's going to be, well, I'm not even talking about my concerns. I'm just saying that's in my mind, right? I say, okay, what are the things? How do we keep the eyes, that coalition moving forward? Because as we said here a couple weeks ago, and Sean has been pointing out, we've got a governor's race coming up. Right, there's a midterm elections coming up, and like the progressive left has, like, with the exception of last year, has historically just dropped off in non-presidential election years. We saw what happens when we turn out in kind of non-presidential years, like we did in 2018. That's where we got AOC. That's where we got Rashida Tlaib. Right, that's where we got Ilhan Omar. Right. The squad came from that election, and I think that is a really kind of important to look forward. And that is only in terms of speaking to electoral politics, right? There's that whole other, say, the acts of building solidarity with each other in movements, right? Which is going to be saying, okay, let's look at, how we keep those lines of communications open. And I agree with you, Sean. I think in Pennsylvania, there's been a lot of work that's already been doing that way, but I think this is important nationally. The second thing is we're going to start to hear, and this is going to be the naysayers in Democratic Party politics, is very quickly, like, if you go back to the bulk of what we've talked about on this podcast before we hit kind of election season, which everything becomes so like narrowly focused, is that we have major crises that need to be addressed. And as I've said on this podcast before, you've got an acute problem and you've got a chronic condition. The acute problem is Donald Trump, right, in the presidential office and what he's doing, and you got to kind of solve that acute condition, right? You got to kind of like cut that shit out. But when you cut that out, you're not healthy. You're just not going to die, right? So, okay, so the democracy is not going to die, but the chronic condition is the kind of things that Bernie Sanders, that the progressive left have been kind of drawing attention to for years. It has to do with, yes, obviously COVID-19 now, a pandemic on top of all. We're talking massive inequality, right? We're talking about redistribution of the wealth upward in the sense that you got these billionaires who are basically controlling the path for victory. You talk about money in politics and Citizens United. You're talking about the gutting of the labor movement. You're talking about a climate crisis, right? You're talking about a war on black people and brown people. You're talking about a rabid anti kind of immigrant thing. You're talking about freaking kids getting ripped away from their parents, and that's got to be solved. All of those things. And that's not even touching on like the international stage. Those are the kinds of things that have been motivating moving forward, and this is kind of important because what is going to happen, especially since the Democratic Party failed to to increase the majorities in the House and failed to take the Senate, which means that Mitch McConnell once again is going to be leading the Senate, and we're going to start hearing from Democrats, well, there's not much we can do because we got a Republican in the Senate. So one of the things I want to draw people's attention to, I've been tweeting about this for the past few days, but the American Prospect, under the leadership of David Dayen, right, they had a special issue which is called the Day One Agenda. right? And I'm not saying this is the end all be all on this, but what they did, and this was back before when the primaries were still going on, and there were Bernie Sanders, even Elizabeth Warren, but mostly it was directed at Bernie Sanders, talking about, well, how are you going to get this stuff accomplished, right, in a Republican Senate, right, this kind of stuff. And then Bernie would have to kind of go and explain, blah, blah. But what David Day and people of the American Prospect did in this day one agenda, it'll be linked in the show notes, was go through all of the things that could be done at the presidential level through one of two things. One, either not just executive order, right? That's how people think about president, executive order. No, but the executive branch, right, is the office which is supposed to enforce the existing regulations, right? So, for example, when you're looking at the EPA regulations, you could change those regulations at the EPA, which will have a direct impact on climate. You could change you could basically forgive student loans, for example, right? There's a whole bunch of things that will not require Senate approval, that doesn't require this kumbaya moment where everyone gets together, because we're going to see that from the Democratic Party leadership. It's worth taking some time. Now we got this little space. We got to really think about organizing and smart organizing going forward. Familiarize yourself with that day one agenda, right? Again, link is in the show notes. It's completely worth doing. We're going to be talking about it in kind of like the weeks and months to come. Not just that one, but we'll look at some other similar kinds of things. So what is it that we want to prioritize and why? And then how do we think about building that at the local level and at the state level and obviously at the national level? So that's where we're going to go. So, Sean, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, like, we have to fucking continue doing what we're doing now, be in the streets. I mean, like, you know, the labor movement, it's going to get worse for us now with the Senate being solidified.
Yep.
There's going to be more attacks against working people. There's going to be, we can't expand the courts now because of this. This locks in the Supreme Court majority. The overturning of Roe v. Wade. Like, you know, like, we're going to be hurting as a movement. And we need to fight back and stamp this shit out.
Yep.
And I feel like that's pretty much all I have to say.
No, good. And this is a message that I'm going to give out to progressive organizations. Okay. And I'll talk about more about this in kind of like, you know, in an afterward for patrons only in our patron show kind of later on. But one of the things that is going to be critical, because, like, look, this is where progressive organizations, and I include labor organizations, left organizations, kind of think tanks, like, you know, nonprofits, all that stuff. When you're leading up for an election, right, suddenly you realize the value of investing in our infrastructures, right? Yes, you always hear me talk about our media infrastructure, but I'm talking about our organizational infrastructure too. The work that's been done, Sean's been active in doing this right now for the past couple of years. That is the same kind of stuff that needs to be continue. And like I'm telling you, like, folks in the labor movement, like at the leadership levels, people at these nonprofits, things like that, you cannot cut off the spigot now, because the tendency is now, okay, the election's over, now we're going to withdraw our funds. If you bleed us dry now, forget it, game over. So we're going to talk. We'll talk about more of that in the patrons only section. But
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Yeah. So anything else for the good of the order?
Nothing really.
Cool. Well, hey, listen, we're going to go to today's last call, and I do hope that everybody is going to take this moment once again to feel good while we go on the break.
I want to say this.
Oh, go ahead. Go.
Within the House Dems, there will be leadership elections coming up, very contentious leadership elections. Frank Dermody lost his re-election bid, so that means we're going to have a new minority leader within the Pennsylvania House Dems. I'm looking forward to this. I feel like we finally have leadership that isn't 2 decades past its prime in that building. You know, like they're the old white man's club that was holding on to the Pennsylvania Democratic Party is finally done with, especially in the House. You know, like, listen, Dermody was a weak opposition leader.
Yep.
Plain and simple. Failed decade. Yeah, we can talk about being in legislative minority because of districts being redrawn, not in our favors. But you know what? There's been the Democrats spent the past decade not acting as an opposition party.
Right.
To the Republicans. You know, and that's going to change. I think we're going to have a really good minority leader in Matt Bradford, who, you know, kind of like wrinkles feathers within the caucus because he's not a fundraiser. he comes from a super safe district and doesn't put an emphasis on raising funds because that's not who he is. He's more of a good government, wonky, very smart, one of the smartest people up there. And he takes the time to read everything. We're going to have an battle for appropriations chair because that's what Matt Bradford was. And we're going to have progressives now running for running for leadership in Harrisburg. Elizabeth Fiedler announced that she's running for leadership.
Oh, awesome.
I don't want to put this out there, but there are going to be a couple of people who are in leadership stepping down and looking to challenge progressive Larry Krasner, but I'm not going to say anyone. We'll see if that comes to fruition, which is going to be another really bad move by that person, but we'll see. I mean, this person's pretty good, but yeah, we'll see if that comes out. And yeah, there's going to be a bunch of open leadership spots in Pennsylvania politics.
I really hope that we're going to get somebody in leadership position that is going to champion charter schools and the privatization.
You mean have a mole from the Commonwealth Foundation?
Yeah, if we only knew somebody like that. You know anybody like that? I don't know anybody like that.
Horton Jarris? Is that? I don't know.
It's Horton
Jordan,
money.
I think
Horton.
I mean, like, listen,
Jordan.
Representative Jordan Harris took $600,000 from the charter school people who funded the attacks against the House Dems.
Yep.
If that's not a fucking issue for your special leadership elections, I don't know what is.
Yep.
Full stop.
Boom. All I got to say, man.
I know that. I guarantee you that will be used against him, and if he tries to go for higher positions within the leadership of the party.
Man.
So,
well,
that's all I have to say.
Yep, there we go. All right, so this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right with this week's Last Call. Welcome back to Raging Chicken's Altitude Podcast. It's our last call. Like I said, we're changing up our format a little bit. There's been no space news this year. I'll give you a little bit of beer recommendations right now, but we thought a good way to close out the day today was with the protest, the count every vote protest. So, Sean, take it away.
I'll say this now. Gritty is now trending on Twitter.
wait, what is you broke up? Gritty?
Gritty, yes. Gritty.
Nice.
Okay, so I guess like this is also like one of the things we've been talking about for weeks now, which had me on nerves. Like, what was the response after the election going to be? We knew like some states were going to be closed. I had a good feeling about the results coming in. By 10 o'clock, that Biden pretty much was going to, like, on election night, I felt good going to bed. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I did too.
It's just like, but I also feel like the protests that happened in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, you know, and also in other swing states around the country.
That's what I was going to say. It wasn't just limited to Pennsylvania. This was everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere where there was going to be really contested elections, especially.
And yeah, I mean, like, people were upset with the messaging of count every vote. But you know what? Sometimes you need that simple, like, they came up with stop the steal. Like, the other side thinks they're like, stop the steal. The steal what? Like, you know what I mean?
Wait, who
Where
was
this is,
upset?
like,
There was people that were upset with the count every vote?
oh yeah, there's they're counter protesters up in Harrisburg.
No.
Like, Chip Jordan-
I'm saying you're saying there were some people that were upset with the messaging of count every vote.
Like, we should like be more fire and brimstone.
Oh
Like,
no, man! That was
an aggressive.
count every vote was the perfect thing. That was the absolute perfect message in my mind. I would have argued. I would have gone to the mat for that.
Yeah.
To say that.
No, I guess people were feeling pessimistic, and it's just like, you know, I mean, like, this is like, yeah, I mean, we pretty much just tweeted everything saying count every vote, like, over the past like 3 days,
Yeah.
to like amplify that messaging. But I mean, I think these protests showed that, I think it diffused a lot of situations. It took the messaging away from Republicans to try to steal the election. It took the messaging, it took the fire away from the alt-right and grifters I was expecting the absolute worst election day. You know, we were talking about this. I was expecting Fox News to call the election for Trump. I was expecting the alt-right media infrastructure to just go fucking crazy, spreading disinformation and getting that into the mainstream. You know, and it's pleasing that didn't happen. You know, it's pleasing.
But I don't think it's just a function of that it didn't happen. I honestly believe that the protest helped that not happen.
Stole that narrative.
Because, well, at the very least,
streets,
right? I mean, because like what happens, that other side, and you saw this happening throughout the night too as well, that radical fringe stuff, like they fill vacuums, right? When you don't allow the vacuum, right? When you already kind of like command the space. And what they did in Philly, I swear to God, I was freaking loving watching some of the protest streams from Philly where they were insisting on the celebration to count every vote, right? That kept on coming back, and they were dancing, there was music, it was joyful, right? That really, I think in this context, I'm not saying that works everywhere, but in this context was exactly the kind of message, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to have these other people come in, these right-wing people come in and like be mad? I mean, sometimes it means like what people see
we prevented a
matters.
Brook Brothers riot from happening at the election counting site.
I agree 100%.
And I don't think that they were ready for that.
They weren't. They didn't know what to do with that. I guarantee you.
And when Corey Lewandowski fucking showed up and Laura Trump showed up to the fucking, and Giuliani showed up to the, like, dude, you showed up to Philadelphia after fucking mocking Philadelphians. Like, have you ever been to an Eagles game? Like, have you ever, okay, not even an Eagles game. Have you ever been to a Flyers game before, sitting in the nosebleeds? You want to talk about like a group of rowdy, pissed off fucking people? Go sit in the nosebleeds at a hockey game in Philadelphia with the opposing jersey on and see like how many beers you get thrown at you. You know, you get the shit kicked out of you. Like, I've seen multiple like brawls happen in these states. Like, my dad worked at the First Union Center, and like he was an usher, and he's just like, man, we're playing the fucking Maple Leafs again in the playoffs, because the Maple Leaf fans traveled, and when they came to Philly, there'd just be fights like everywhere in the stands. Like, but no, I mean, like, you fucked with Philly, like, and Philly doesn't like take that shit lightly.
Man. But I mean, congratulations to everybody in the street. I mean, the protests were I think, were amazing.
I got hired to take photos.
Well, there you go. And they were good, very, very good photos too, as well. Myself, at least what I've seen.
There's a couple photos I've absolutely loved. I want to thank Hannah from PA Stands Up for asking me to do that. Inviting me to do that. I was able to rent a lens that I'm going to be purchasing.
Yeah. I was figuring you would.
Well, so I mean, I guess towards the end, I'll talk about my next month and a half, what I'm going to be doing personally, because I'm going to be putting photo books together. But we can talk about that in a bit.
Cool, man. Cool.
Yeah, but no, I mean, the protests were a dance party. I it was actually funny. My mom was talking about, it's no, the whole entire reason why we're planning these rallies is to stop them from trying to steal this into courts and not give them a space to do so.
Right.
And I feel that message kind of got across no, this is what we spent weeks doing. And it feels amazing being in this position where I'm at now, career wise, but to go through this, the count every vote thing. No, I mean, to go through the count every vote thing, to see that blossom.
Yep.
And see that get diffused out here, even in Harrisburg. I mean, we're not giving you a space to do this. And guess what? We're going to continue to dance in Philly until Monday morning, okay? No, I mean, the way, the Philly, they surround the convention center, dancing and turn it into a dance party and stuff like that. Absolutely phenomenal. Did you see, the mailboxes, the twerking mailboxes?
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
the visuals, and I mean, this is the type of stuff this stuff matters for the left, those visuals and stuff like that. And it's good seeing that we have this infrastructure in place, especially the communications part is really, we're really getting our ducks in order as a movement, and it's fun it's gonna be fun watching and see where this goes.
Yeah, I agree. And
PA Stands Up, and all the unions did this. We the people, CASA, the immigrant rights organizations, the whole entire left, broad coalition showed up to these count every votes protests here in Pennsylvania.
It's fantastic.
And
it's fantastic
I really
stuff.
believe that it stopped any violence from happening.
I agree. 100%. I agree 100%. I mean, it's this is when you have, it's very hard to especially with the joyous stuff, right? When people are peaceful stuff, when you're arguing in terms of, or not even arguing, but encouraging something that, look, there's certain things that are kind of baked into American culture and things that are kind of supposed collective values, at least those things that are kind of drilled in your head all throughout school. And one of them is you count votes, right? You don't kind of suppress the vote. And so to take up that and kind of to claim that as it makes it hard for people to come in and say the opposite, right? Or to even enter a joyous situation with kind of brutality and violence. Not that it won't happen, it will. But in terms of the effectivity of organization around this event, again, I'm talking specifically about this, right?
And this is exactly what people were talking about, on the Majority Report leading up to this.
Yep.
That one organizer who was on last week.
Left is best.
He was actually on.
Left is best.
He was on one of our. He was on one of our organizing calls a few weeks ago. That same person who was on, I don't know his name right now, but he's a consultant with the Sunrise Movement.
Yeah, we talked about him last time. Yeah,
all he does is staging protests and visuals and how important they are to convey the message. And no, I mean, we saw that, and it's pretty amazing seeing how this spread. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
no, absolutely. And one of the things that that I'll just say this, and then we can we talk about your photo books. But yeah, right, exactly. I'm just looking for that guy's name. Joshua Russell, was that him?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, 10 steps how to stop a coup.
Right.
Is what they've been writing and following the waging nonviolence and stuff like that. Like, and this was like, boom, we saw this, like, you know, I think we saw the immediate outpour and reaction to when counties said they weren't going to be counting ballots last Tuesday.
Yep.
Or start the process of opening them up. And people were like, no, fuck you, count the votes.
Right.
Like, sitting through a 3-hour Board of Elections meeting, it usually takes 15 minutes because so many people from Cumberland County called in to their county commissioners and be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, that shit there put people on edge.
Yep.
So,
yep, it's fantastic.
I mean, the protests were amazing. I got some awesome photos. One, my friend Hani, who was dressed up in drag, was awesome with the Capitol Dome in the background.
Yeah.
And the other one was the other great one was the woman dressed up as a Statue of Liberty, framed up with the Capitol Dome as well.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yep. So great. So one thing I'll say, the last thing on the protests and messaging and stuff like that, you know, there was this discussion that, you know, it's been poking up kind of in the media, left media, right, in particular, talking about kind of strategy and messaging and things like this, and the need, in some cases, people talk about the need to appropriate kind of like American symbolism, right, as a way to kind of like take it over. And sometimes you hear this periodically. I mean, I've heard the version of this conversation since as long as I can remember. Whereas, like, you know, we should claim the flag, right? We should be the ones we should drape ourselves in thing. And so, you know, we've seen this at kind of Democratic Party conventions, right? Where, you know, the Hillary Clinton convention, that one was like one in particular where everything was like flags, 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 and we were going to drape ourselves in American patriotism. But one of the things that and I understand where that's coming from, right? It's the idea that you actually need to communicate to real people, right? That, you know, we can talk, you know, I can read all 3 volumes of Capital and the Grundrisse, right, to understand how Capital works, right? And I have, right? But doing that kind of analytic work and theoretic work and things like this is not the same as communicating with people, right? So we did the analysis, but then we have the communication and kind of how we kind of engage, right? And I think that, you know, it is important, right? You know, look, I study rhetoric, right? And one of the things that you learn from either cognitive psychology or you learn this also in rhetoric is that you have to communicate. You can't expect people to kind of jump frames, right? This is the Lakoff stuff. You can't expect to just kind of jump over and kind of like inhabit something else. You have to kind of like engage with kind of like where you find these shared meanings and begin to shift. And I think that what we saw, one of the reasons these protests were so successful is because they did that. Right? They didn't do it. They did it on the grounds of democracy, right? This is a value that we are supposedly, right, as a nation, however, you know, critical we want to be of that. That's something that is a kind of baseline value. And some of the ways that we can claim that kind of expansion of democracy, right, about claim those values of kind of like everyone counts. Right, and then we get to articulate. Our needs are the ones that should be being expressed and kind of like advocated for. We should set the agendas, right? That is a bigger tent, right? That is a bigger kind of messaging tent that allows us to kind of have those kind of those organizing conversations, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, this is what you learn in labor organizing, right? I mean, this is one thing that, you know, I remember having to get my head around that when I having to organize. We're doing labor organizing. I was at George Washington University for an adjunct union. Is like, you know, you have your ideology, right? But then you have the act of organizing, right? And what the main message is organizing is like, you work here, you matter, you should have a say. You should not have to put up with that. And the only way that we can make sure that you are not harmed and you are not harmed, you are not harmed, is to organize together and resist as a whole. That's the baseline message. And then in that framework is where you work out and have those kind of more difficult conversations. But
yeah, and
I thought
like
closing for the day.
And I feel like this is going to be a case study within left politics and messaging and communications. Like the way, I mean, it was just so simple of a thing. So that's all I gotta say. It was fun being there. Can't wait till tomorrow. Last day. Gonna go out, take pictures, and yeah.
Very cool. So tell us a little about your picture taking endeavors.
So I decided, like, I've been throwing this idea around for a while. I started making my own prints. For some people who can't see my office, like, I started putting posters up, right there. On my sidewall over here.
And I understand you took my advice on the Velcro.
Yes.
Very great, right?
Amazing. Like, it's better than like that double-sided adhesive that always falls off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can
like,
adjust it, right? So that make it nice and tight. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, like what I did was like put them on and then got my level and just like it took one corner, everything but one corner, and just like and
beautiful,
there
right?
we go.
There you go.
No, but like one of the things like I'm gonna do, like especially behind that wall behind me, is I bought ceiling hooks. I'm gonna screw them in. I'm gonna start hanging photos. It's time to like do this up. I mean, make this my political room.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be hanging photos. I'm gonna start printing my photos. And one of the things I want to do is I'm gonna make a photo book. They're about around $125 to actually create. I'm gonna take 25 of my favorite photos from this past year, put them in a book, maybe like 10 by 10 or 8 by 8, probably 10 by 10, and or something that's like landscaped, and sell them. And have that portfolio as a portfolio piece for me, because I think there are a ton of photos that I took this year that I just fucking love that came out really good. And use that as a way to buy equipment, have a portfolio piece, use that to show people. And I'm thinking I'm trying to keep the price fair. I think it might be around $250 a book.
$250 a book?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, all that labor that goes into that.
Holy shit.
Hey man, it cost me $100 to like make. 10 books gets me $1,000.
Holy shit. No, I'm just kidding.
But no, I've already gotten a few people reach out to me that said that they're definitely interested in buying them. And, I'm going to reach out to some of the local community members, business owners around here who are part of the left community, and ask them if they would want to have it and put it on display and stuff like that.
You're going to have like little perforated pages and stuff like that, and like some coloring pages in the back too as well? Or is it just strictly...
No, this is going to be like a straight like hardcover coffee table book.
Table book.
Yeah.
That's one hell of a coffee table.
But no, I mean, like that's the type of thing. Like, but I really just want to start. I mean, it's one thing to have these pictures on your screen, but it's another thing to like put them on paper.
Yep.
And be able to like look at them. So.
Yep. So while we're talking about books, this is going to be one of the things I mentioned is my little surprise. So this little puppy right here, right? This is Activism and Rhetoric, Seth Khan and Zhonghua Li, right? This is the second edition. I just got my copy in the mail. And the reason why I want to show it to you is because I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. People are going to see this up here, but it's... no, I'll just read it to you. There's this chapter 9 in here is by this guy by the name of Kevin Mahoney. And the article is Raging Media, Investing in an Infrastructure of Resistance, right? It's about Raging Chicken Press. You can get your copy, Activism Rhetoric, today. I was very excited. I want a huge thanks to Seth and Zhonghua for putting this together for the second edition. Thanks to the publishers of Routledge, who are in the first edition. In the first edition, it kind of went so well, got picked up. It's what they reached out. They wanted a second updated version. Like the first edition came out right before the Tea Party victories in 2010. And so Routledge basically reached out to Seth and Zhonghua. They basically were saying, look, a lot has happened since then. Would you guys want to do an updated version? And so some of us wrote new articles. That was me. I kind of wrote a whole new piece on this, really focusing on the story of Raging Chicken, right? And the necessity. If you've been on this podcast, you probably you're basically hearing part of what I still talk about here about the necessity of investing in our future. So that was a huge deal. I was very psyched about that. That's my big news, right, for the week.
Nice. I'm about to shit post more about on Twitter.
Oh God, here you go. Well, before you get into shit posting, go ahead.
Let's just say, Tim DeFore has, Republican Auditor General has won, which is not going to be fun for us, but all right.
Yep.
But no, shit posting and
yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the days ahead. I didn't want to. There's a lot of kind of
there's
like
a lot to dissect. And I
there's
feel like this is,
look, there's a lot, and let me be clear. I was hinting towards this at the beginning of the show, but I mean, right now, look, there's a lot that
I don't think today should be the day for
that's
us
my
to
point.
say.
That's exactly my point. It's like, and I just
We've
wanted.
done a lot of that over the past couple of days, skewing and.
I even look. My goal. I'll tell everybody right now. If you listen to the show right now, I'll tell you what my plans are for the Out the Coop lives in the coming weeks. Is to reaching out to some of candidates that ran in this past election, some who won, some who did not, to talk a little bit about the process, and kind of looking forward. Because look, as I think about out in the Harrisburg area, right, kind of what we saw, we had Tara Zarinsky. I'm talking too fast. On the show a couple weeks ago, she lost her race, but she did freaking amazing work, right? And I think part of this dynamic of what Sean was talking about, keep on doing what we're doing, is to kind of like look at these folks, some who won and some who lost their races, is that the work that they did was so absolutely amazing. So I think what their perspective is incredibly valuable. So I want to begin to have them on the show, ideally kind of having a couple at a time to have these conversations as we look forward. So I'm very excited. Seth Goldstein just got on our YouTube page. Seth, how the hell are you? So that's looking forward, right? So yesterday, this is kind of like me getting ahead of myself in my head, is like I literally sat down and have the email half composed to send out to some folks to see if they wanted to come on the show. Then I'm like, we just need a little time before we kind of even think about that. Let's just kind of be where we are now. So coming up on Out the Coop Live on Monday, it's probably just going to be a little bit of I've reached out to a couple people to see if they wanted to come on the show to do a little bit of a debrief, a little bit post-mortem. I haven't heard back from anybody yet because everyone is like super freaking busy and focused on the election. So we might do a little bit of a shorter one, just have a kind of a call-in show to talk about people's experience of the election, what they think about it. That's kind of the direction I'm going. But then in the week after that, we'll start looking at get some more folks on the show to talk a little bit about kind of like looking backwards, looking forward, right? Cool. Yeah, so you got anything else for the good of the order, Sean?
No, nothing really. I just can't believe fucking Jim Jordan was up here yesterday.
Yeah,
that's about it.
That's great.
For those who Fox News asked us to use the photo, and we responded by saying Fox News or Fox Business News cannot use our photo.
Yep.
Fuck off, pretty much.
Yeah.
And they deleted the tweet.
Oh, there you go. So I'll have my last thing for the day is Seth says he wants your sweatshirt. By the way.
Man, I don't know what to tell you. I got this at the rally the other night, and I don't know if I can let this go, Seth.
There you go. So last night I just wanted to be prepared. When I can, I like to plan on things. A lot of times I can't, but I like to plan a little bit ahead at least. So I didn't want to get caught like on my heels, so to speak. So I want to make sure that I stocked up on some beverages last night. So I made a little trip to Free Will. I actually had some stuff already, but I just thought they had some releases that I was hoping I'm saving one to taste when now tonight because of the win. But I want to give you a breakdown of some of what I got real quick. They have got an apple pie mash, which I just can't. I just said those words and my mouth watered. Right, because I know their mashes and how freaking amazing Free Will's mashes are. This is the first time they've ever done this one, to my understanding. It's a sour ale with apple, cinnamon, ginger, vanilla, and milk sugar. And my guess is going to have the same kind of really creamy kind of like taste that the other ones have, which I'm very, very excited about. So had the apple pie mash. I also picked up, you heard me talk about this on last week's show. They had a DDH Love Letter for the 90s. That is just always great. I mean, I love this. One of my favorite releases that come out every year. It's a double dry hopped hazy IPA with milk sugar. It's hopped with Galaxy, Mosaic, and Citra. Comes in at 7.2 ABV. I picked up some of that. Definitely check that out. They also have some other ones which they've never had before, which I'm really intrigued. They look like they're trying some things in some different directions. They have one that's called Outlaw Country. That is also a hazy pale ale with Azaka. Do you know that?
Azaka.
Azaka, cashmere, and Huel melon. That comes in at 5.2 ABV, so it's a little bit of a kind of a sessionable kind of drinking. That's also available in 4-packs. And the final two that I got was Parish, which I had one of those last night, I'll admit, which was super good. And that was a hazy IPA with Galaxy and Enigma, comes in at 7.4 ABV. That one had this really kind of cool, like, dry bite to it, which was super nice. And finally, The Future Is. This is one I've talked about kind of a couple weeks ago. Did not have one, but I had one last night too as well. That's the one I cheers Sean at like 2 o'clock in the morning with. And that is a Pilsner. That comes in at 5% ABV. Super crisp, nice light drinking, great beer. So you can get all those. You guys just go to freewillbrewing.store, right? If you go to them, you get a chance to leave them a message. You can let them know that Raging Chicken sent you. Would appreciate it. We don't get, want to be clear, we don't get anything from them, right? They work and build this brewery in my community, so I'm going to support them. Just like when the second brewery opens up, which should be sometime in the summer of next year, you're going to be hearing about them too as well. But do check out Free Will, and remember that you can order online and you go pick it up in the store, or right here in Percy, or you can have it delivered right to your door for any PA address, and if you hit that $85 plus mark, they'll ship it to you for free. So anything else for the good of the order today, Sean?
There is a Stop the Steal rally still happening on the Capitol steps with these right-wing grifters.
There you
All
go.
10 of them showed up.
All 3 of them? Excellent. Does that little dweeby guy with the bow tie thing, is he there too as well? It was like that lawyer or something like that got sent. I don't know, whatever.
Oh, did you see that Harlan Hill guy?
Who's a Harlan Hill?
So Harlan Hill is this like GOP consultant that like said, I want to send an army of people to Philadelphia. And someone saw him yesterday, like, yo, Harlan, where's your fucking army at, man? Oh, you said you're going to bring an army here to Philly. So I actually met this douchebag a while ago at the Keystone Progress Summit. You were there as well. When it was like 2015, I believe, Beth Becker was there. We were at the Firehouse. And Beth Becker, the liberal communications strategist, actually hired this guy. Gave him a start. Just, I guess that's how like the comms world works, regardless of ideology.
Right.
I think it's still stupid, but so like they put a tweet out. The guy that GOP is sending to war in Philadelphia.
That's the guy I'm talking about. That dude. I was saying with the bow tie, the little dweeby guy.
Yeah. Versus the actual lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's why. But yeah, I responded to that one, be like, steel cage match? Question mark. Right?
Yeah.
It's like,
well, I mean, there's a bunch of dweeby fucking bow tie guys that were getting sent to. That's the funny thing. Like they came 3 days late. Like you guys weren't here on Wednesday to start causing shit. Like, like that's the reason why we wanted to go the day after. Like, yeah. So, but that's all I gotta say.
Crazy, man. Well, hey, everybody, I hope you kind of take a little bit of time to kind of enjoy this day, and know that we accomplished something that is like pretty.
It's relieving.
I mean, absolutely necessary, right? Just to stave off the, otherwise complete decline into authoritarianism and fascism. So that's, I mean, seriously, I don't want to try to overstate the case, but come on. I mean, that is where we're headed.
And my mom called me yesterday, and she saw the Trump press conference of him just fucking babbling for she's like, man, he sounds like a whiny little fucking baby, which is like, once that happens and once that gets through the general populace, authoritarians like Trump have no power.
Yeah, but just remember this, is that what he did yesterday, he was reading from notes and he was reading from a script. Yes, he was going up there. So his pattern is always, anytime he has to give one of those talks that people convince him to kind of have this thing, it's usually followed with rage. And so listen, celebrate, but stay vigilant and stay safe. Right, we have got a lot of work ahead of us to do, and we need to take care of each other. We need to kind of build stuff, but stay safe for the thing. Let's get this thing done. Let's button up all up, dot the I's, cross the T's, and because look, we've got 3 months ahead of us with Trump still in office, and there's a lot of shit that's going to happen. Right,
I hope they get the family wing of the prison ready.
Exactly.
That's the next thing we should push for. There must be accountability,
a reckoning
with what happened. We cannot let the Republicans get away with what they did, like after 2008, like after Iran Contra, there has to be accountability. Send people to jail.
100%.
The people from there, like the crimes that were committed, the financial crimes that were committed during the coronavirus pandemic, the fucking looting that was going on with Kodak and others.
When we're talking about looting, by the way, we're talking about white collar corporate looting directly out of the White House and out of our government. Let's be clear about that.
We have people to send to prison at this point for what happened. And,
absolutely.
We have to force the resignations of people like Bill McSwain and David Freed and all these other fascist attorney generals from power.
Yep. And we're going to have to look. My eye is on the fact that over the next several months, the Trump administration has already signaled this, that one of the things they're going to try to do is they're going to try to fire a whole bunch of the civil service staff and kind of put their own appointments within there. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be paying attention to and like fighting that every step of the way. Because once folks get into those positions, right, it's much more difficult to get them out. That's something we got to stop. Right. So I mean,
have to. There are boards like the there are labor relation boards that have people that are stacked with state policy network people.
Yep.
They have to go.
Yep.
Some of the worst fucking labor lawyers from the right wing have been stacked against National Labor Relations Board. Also, like panels within for federal government unions that have rewritten federal labor law. We have to get these people out. We have to uproot them, remove them from politics. There are a lot of things we have to clean up, and we have to fucking force these people out of office and out of their positions. There's no reason for someone like David Osborne or Vincent Vernucci from the Fairness Center or Mackinac Center to be in these fucking positions. They need to go.
Amen.
That's day one. We also have to like tie Trump around these people's fucking necks. Give them the fucking anchor and the concrete cement shoes that they deserve, and never let these people back in government.
Absolutely. So, but before we go after all these Republicans, we should just remember, the important words of our good old PA-based Rick Santorum, who was on CNN saying, Democrats need to give Republicans, including Trump, some time and space to work through their feelings.
Fuck
about
your
losing.
feelings.
And on that note, everybody, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Thank you all for tuning in. And I'll tell you, we've got a lot of time ahead of us. Sean just gave you a preview of where this show is going to be going for the next 3 months. So congratulations, all the work you all did. Thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all the work you've been doing in the streets. Onwards and upwards.